back to my kitchen. My name is Rose. If you like this content, please like, share, and subscribe. Well, before the holidays, we made a barbecue sauce using the paddle cactus fruit from the garden, and it turned out really, really good. Well, actually, it was from our front yard. It turned out really, really good, and since it was a success, I wanted to share this recipe with you because there are paddle cactus fruit growing all over in the desert between Nevada and Arizona. So you could pick those for free. But if you've never seen a paddle cactus fruit, they look like this. And these grow on the Opportunia species of paddle cactus. And we're going to be using some really simple tools today to get the seeds out of our paddle cactus fruit. You notice I was using tongs. Those things have thorns. Don't use your bare hands, right? But to start, what we have here we'll be using, and I tried a couple different tools too, that's why I'm saying simple. This is a colander sieve, and this is a pestle, and then also this is a potato ricer. Works super great. We'll be using a combination of these. We'll also be using a knife and some tongs. So let's go ahead and get started, and I'll just show you quickly how I get the outside of this cactus fruit peeled. And the first couple times you do this, it's a little tedious, but it really doesn't take much to get it down. And we're going to be wanting for this recipe to get 6 cups of paddle cactus puree. So we're going to do a combination of juicing using the potato ricer, and then we're going to push the pulp through the conical sieve to separate the seeds out from the pulp to the best of our ability. We won't be able to get all of it out. See what I'm doing here? I just made a little slit on the surface, and I'm just going like this and just kind of peeling it. Actually, these are super ripe, but there's a lot of seeds in here, and that's why you have to actually use these other tools that I'm using. I did try using a Breville juicer, and I really didn't find it any more effective. I have a Ninja juicer. If you just wanted to get juice out of these are actually a great addition to a smoothie. You can run this through a Ninja juicer too. Works really good. Just take off the outside. You don't want to accidentally consume any of the thorns in the skin, right? That would not be good. No ER visits. But this paddle cactus fruit is super nutritious. One of the coolest things that it has in it is zeaxanthin, right? That's super good for your eyes. So once you do that, you can handle this safely. Okay, so let me demonstrate here the potato ricer. Very simple device. This is under 20 bucks. Just plop it in there like that, right? Make sure you can see this here. And we're just going to take it and go like this. You see some of the juice coming out, right? Not a whole lot. And then we're just going to take it and put it in our conical sieve. And we'll use that to get the puree and the remaining juice out. So I'm going to go ahead and do all of these paddle cactus fruit. Again, we're trying to get 6 cups today of this puree, and then we'll be back. Well, because these paddle cactus fruit are really ripe, you can actually almost roll them out of their skin. And I'm finding it just as easy to just put the paddle cactus fruit directly in the conical sieve. Again, they're super ripe. So just basically get a little bit cut like this, and then hold the skin down, and you can just about roll these out of their skin. Much easier. Make sure you got all of the thorns off before you touch that. We'll just throw that there in our conical sieve. Just go like this. Now this part here gets easier once you have more fruit in there. Right now we've only got about 3 in here, but I think we can just skip that whole ricer. This fruit is really, really ripe. So if you're doing the roll it out of its skin technique and you find that you have fruit left on the inside, all you have to do is take a spoon like this. This is a spoon, it's a measuring spoon that's got a sharp edge, and just kind of scrape it because you don't want to waste any of this fruit. And then you get just a little bit. I know it's tedious, and then just put it in your sieve. And now that I've been doing this for just a little bit, You can start to see that there's some fruit puree at the bottom. I have a feeling that we're probably going to be making a smaller batch, but I always include my recipes in the description of the video, and I will use the full recipe in the description of the video. So I have been pushing this fruit through this sieve, and I think I've gotten most of what I can get out of there. All right, with a little more effort, I was able to get a total of 2 cups of puree and juice from our paddle cactus fruit. Let's go ahead. We're going to be dividing this recipe into thirds. Again, I will include in the description of the video the whole recipe. So let's add our 2 cups of paddle cactus puree into our pot. So we're going to want to have, instead of 2 cups of brown sugar, we're going to have 2/3 cups of brown sugar. So let's go ahead and measure that. Oh, this got solid while I had it out here. All right, so there's a 1/3 cup. The recipe calls for 1.5 cups of apple cider vinegar, so a 1/3 of that is going to be a 1/2 cup. And if your math isn't that good, just use your phone, the calculator, to divide. And let's go ahead and turn our burner on, about medium. Let's get a spoon and give that a little stir, kind of blend those ingredients in. All right, the next ingredient we're going to add is a cup of chopped red onion, which is actually a 1/3 of that is going to be a 1/3 cup. That's not too hard. All right, let's see if we can. Perfect. Okay, let's get into our seasoning now. So we're going to use some celery leaf. Let's do a teaspoon of celery leaf. And let's do a teaspoon of smoked salt. The math, we need to convert a 1/2 teaspoon of cayenne to a 1/3. Is this a 1/15? And I actually think I have a 1/16 teaspoon measuring spoon. Right, that's a 32nd. That's a little smaller than we want. An 1/8 is a little more than we want. So we actually want a 1/2 of this 1/8. So we'll just, we don't have a 1/16. That's interesting. That didn't come in that kit. Let's just guesstimate a little bit here. All right. And we're going to do the same thing with the black pepper. And let's just adjust our temperature down a little bit between medium and low. And stir some of these seasonings in. All right, let's figure out our allspice. So the recipe calls for a 1/2 tablespoon of allspice. We need to do that into a 1/3. That's going to be a little harder. Let's do a 1/2 teaspoon. Allspice is that seasoning that gives barbecue sauce its predominant flavor. So you definitely want to have that for barbecue sauce. Okay, let's do a 1/2 teaspoon of powdered cloves. Yeah, cloves too. That really gives the barbecue sauce a lot of flavor as well. And let's do a half teaspoon of cinnamon. And then we will have all of our seasonings added in. Okay, and my husband helped me adjust this morning, so it's on really tight. We're just gonna wing it here. That looks about good to me. At this point, I want to give this a little taste and just see how we're doing with the seasoning. Because the onions aren't even beginning to be cooked at this point. It's not bad. I feel like it could use a little bit more of the smoked salt. And we'll let this cook for a little bit. Let it cook down, and then we'll give it another try. So the celery leaf was overpowering everything, so I ended up adding another 1/4 teaspoon of allspice, another 1/8 teaspoon of cloves, and another 1/8 teaspoon of cayenne, and another 1/8 teaspoon of black pepper, and I also added another 1/4 cup of the brown sugar. For this recipe, I would say it's safer to double the recipe. It's a lot harder to reduce it to 1/3, but it's still going to turn out really good. But let's let it cook down a little bit more. Okay, while this sauce is cooking down, let's go ahead and take a look, and I'll show you what it looks like. It's getting nice and brown and bubbly in there. And I'll go ahead and tell you what the full recipe is. 6 cups fruit puree, 2 cups brown sugar, 1 cup chopped red onion. You could use yellow or white if you wanted, but I tend to use chopped red onion. 1.5 cups of apple cider vinegar, 1 tablespoon celery leaf, 1 tablespoon smoked salt, 1/2 teaspoon cayenne pepper, 1/2 teaspoon black pepper, 1/2 tablespoon allspice, 1/2 tablespoon powdered cloves, 1/2 tablespoon of cinnamon. And once this cooks down, we will be pressure canning at 15 pounds of pressure for 20 minutes. If you live at 1,000 feet or lower, below sea level, you can use 10 pounds of pressure, but we're at 2,000 feet, so we'll be using 15 pounds of pressure. All right, our barbecue sauce has been cooking down for about 40 minutes. Let's go ahead and give this one more try before we ladle it into our jars. Actually, I think in this case, it's such a small batch, we might just pour it into our jars. Let's just take a little taste and make sure we're satisfied with the flavor before we go to the trouble of canning this. All right, this is pretty good. Whenever you're making recipes, if I use seasoning you don't like, feel free to substitute a seasoning that you do like. Try to keep the ratios proportionate, especially with things like onion. Don't overdo the onion or add too much pepper. Like fresh vegetables, because you can affect the acidity content of your recipe, which could potentially make it unsafe. You can also get a acidity tester from a Puree Instruments. I'll include a link to that as well. I've had really good success with my acidity tester from a Puree Instruments as far as like verifying the acidity of recipes when I'm trying new things. Let's go ahead and get this put in our jars now so we can get this canning process taken care of. Turn this off. I'm going to put this big burner with the pressure canner on medium heat. And let's just try this way. Normally I use a soup ladle, but I think this is such a small batch, I don't really need that. I really love it when I can find something in the wild, or in this case, in our yard. There isn't a whole lot in the wild here, but I can tell you without a doubt that there are a lot of these paddle cactus fruit between Nevada and Arizona, and I believe there's some between Nevada and Utah as well. A friend of mine likes to go to Utah, and in the past she's come back with a lot of paddle cactus fruit from that trip. She likes to make jelly with hers. Her jelly is good, but my favorite jelly is apricot. I'm using a canning funnel. This is by far the best way to make as little of a mess as possible and not overfill your jars at the same time. Now the next step is we're going to wipe our rims with some vinegar, some white vinegar. This will help ensure that the rims are clean, and it will improve how well our jars seal. Most of the time that all works out really good for me, but if you've ever done some canning and had jars not seal, you know how frustrating that is. Let's just go ahead and be extra safe here and wipe our rims with white vinegar. It's probably about the smallest batch that I've ever put in jars, but it's worth it. Okay, let's add our lids to our jars. And let's do our rings. And I kind of hold those lids in place while I tighten the rings. And don't over tighten. Oops. This is a wonderful way to preserve the outdoors and bring it inside for your enjoyment all year round. All right, let's go ahead and get these jars in a pressure canner. And get our lid on. That out of the way. All right, I'm going to put this on just below medium temperature, and when it starts blowing steam, we'll be back. So we are almost to the finish line on this project. I have been working on this for about 4 hours, and I think even if you did the whole 6 cups of puree, it'd take you about the same amount of time. When you do pressure canning, you want to be sure to carve yourself out some time. Don't be rushed, because that's when you make mistakes. And we are almost done with blowing steam here. And we will be putting our rocker on and letting this process for 20 minutes. When I use a pressure canner, I usually wait 1 or 2 hours after the timer goes off before I try to take anything out of the pressure canner. The pressure canner is really hot, and the lid actually locks on there, so I don't think you could actually remove the lid without the pressure dropping, but you want to make absolutely certain that your pressure has dropped before you try to open the lid and try to take the jars out. And also, trying to remove your jars when they're too hot will actually sometimes cause breakage of your jars, so that's another consideration. So let's go ahead and put our rocker on. I'm going to let this get up to 15 pounds of pressure. Now, if you're relying on your gauge to tell you you're at 15 pounds of pressure, you need to have it calibrated. If you look at my gauge, you can actually see it's off by 2 notches. So what I'm going to be relying on to tell me that I'm up to pressure is that little rocker. And that rocker will just start rocking like this and rattling and making some noise. So once this gets up to pressure, I am going to let it process for 20 minutes. And then we will let our jars cool. And we will come back in the morning with a short just to let you see how this turned out. Thanks for watching.